So the dire state of many of our municipalities addressed today during the President's question and answer session. Some of the things he said, acknowledging that the skills deficit was most prominent at local government level, and that, coupled with corruption and often a lack of money, leads to a very toxic state of services. So what do our future municipalities look like? Can they pull themselves out of the problems they face? This was a topic of discussion at the Northwest University School of Governance this week. And to tell us all about it, I'm joined by Professor Kedibone Phago, who is Director of the School of Government Studies at the Northwest University. Professor, thank you very much for joining us. I'm not sure if you were able to listen to what the President had to say, but none of it was really news to us because we know that our municipalities are in a really difficult state. So we know of the challenges, I guess is what I'm saying. What did your discussion focus on in terms of the future of municipalities? Did you come to a conclusion about what the future holds?
Thank you, Sally. Good evening, and to your viewers as well. And thank you so much for bringing us to come and reflect further on these important issues of our municipalities. And you are very correct. We are concerned as a university, as academics in the country, on the sustainability of our public institutions. And I think the municipalities play a critical role in really just making sure that our communities have the most basic services that, you know, me and you need on a day-to-day basis. So we did have a media event, and the issues we really tried to do was to reflect on this, but also to chart a way forward. And part of the reflection was to look into the constitutional mandate of the municipalities and the developments over the years, the various interventions as far back as 2005, the project Consolidate, we had the local government turnaround strategy. There is a buzzword currently called the district development model, which we think that, and as you rightly said, the biggest elephant in the room is corruption in our country. And over the years, all these interventions, the Development Bank of Southern Africa was involved in making sure that they support engineers, they support accountants, but all that came, you know, to naught, and mainly because we have a highly politicized local government system at the expense of professionalizing our local government system. So yes, we reflected on this, and some of the critical questions was what we need to do in the wake of the coalition governments in South Africa at the moment is to legislate, and legislation that will help us regulate how these conflicts should be managed, because we know if we leave this in the hands of politicians, we already know what will be the outcome of that. So I think we need. Yeah, yes.
What I was saying is you've raised some very interesting issues already, like legislating how coalitions must work. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the city of Johannesburg, it's very hard to understand who's right, who's wrong, because the ANC is saying that the DA-led coalition has essentially collapsed the finances. The counterpoint to that argument from the DA is you're blocking our attempt to get a 2 billion rand loan, and we need that money to keep the municipality running. So it's very hard for the ordinary citizen to know what's right, what's wrong, and then services slide in the meantime. You've also spoken about corruption, the politicization of the public service, and that's an interesting point because the National Framework for Professionalisation of the Public Sector, that's been endorsed by Cabinet recently, and that actually essentially ditches cadre deployment. Deputy Chief Justice Zondo during state capture report saying that cadre deployment is the gateway to corruption, or it can be, and needs to be ditched. Is that the sort of thing that you think needs to happen immediately, that this national framework for professionalisation, do you think that would make a difference, for example?
It's something we need to see, Sally, but sadly, you see, we need leadership. And when we elect people who we believe that they have leadership qualities that are going to support and help our country to develop and to move forward, it's very sad that what we see so far on the ground, if you look at the questions of load shedding, the collapsing of the meetings, the tensions that are just playing out between political parties at the highest leadership level, the potholes on our roads, we're driving like drunkards.
Yeah.
So I think we need to interrogate the question of building strong institutions in this country. And I think that would be something that can save us, because a framework that is developed by politicians will always serve a political agenda. And so we should find ways of working together as a country with the civil society, with NGOs, with traditional leaders. I really think that the space of traditional leadership in this country, especially at the local government sphere, is very wide open, and they really need to grab that and unite the country so that we can deal with the elephant in the room of corruption and underdevelopment.
It's very interesting what you're talking about, the need to really sort of an emergency intervention to build strong institutions at local level. The President alluding to the fact that there's just a lack of skills at local level, that they don't have the money necessarily to hire the people. And you're suggesting a role for traditional leadership, but it's about returning to a sort of moral, ethical centre to get away from corruption, which of course doesn't happen overnight. In the meantime, there's sort of practical suggestions coming from Panyaza Lesufi, the Premier here in Gauteng. He's suggesting that Soweto's Eskom debt be written off. The President's saying, well, not so fast. We believe in the user pay principle. But he's also not totally ruling it out. Do you think that there's a level of creating clean slates that might need to happen to sort out some of the problems at municipal level? Or do you think that will just further entrench that sense of, I don't need to pay for my services?
Sally, I think what these politicians are doing, they are just point scoring and maybe even preparing for the 2024 elections. And they really don't have any interest of South Africans at heart. So the issues of service delivery, the issue, and I mean, it's not just the question of payments of services, it's the quality of the schools that we have, it's quality of healthcare services that we have, it's quality of municipal roads that need to be provided, that we really need to be focusing on. And I don't really think that there is an excuse that there is no money. I think the challenge is we have really squandered our opportunities to work on the developmental agenda of South Africa. So we do have a role as a society to really keep on raising these issues. But I think there are institutions like the Auditor General that have really worked so hard in this country to demonstrate and provide a track record of good quality leadership, but also information about what is going on in these municipalities. So what these leaders are saying, there is nothing new to Soweto electricity crisis, and why have they not been addressing it and making very decisive actions on that? So we need to focus on the development of our country and supporting our institutions and professionalizing our institutions.
And I suppose, I mean, you know, the question is the how. In a nutshell, if I can ask you to sum it up in a minute or less, what is the future of our municipalities realistically, given that we are seeing attempts to professionalize, we are seeing attempts to sort out corruption, but we know we have a lack of skills, we still have a corruption. Bringing all that together, and I know it's a really tough ask, but if you had to give me your sense of the future of our municipalities, given what we know now, where are we heading?
Firstly, I think the reality is that the future of our municipality present a very complex picture, because if that is predicated on the past, it really means that we are sinking. And the second point is that when we look into the coalition government system that is coming to be with us and stay with us for a time, we need to prepare thoroughly, and we should not actually be leaving this to political system to resolve. But I think we need to put a lot of pressure as civil society, as academics, as media, to have platforms to require accountability, to make sure that we build very strong, accountable institutions. And if we don't do that, we are going to lose these institutions and therefore our development as a nation.
Well, thank you very much. That is the crossroads we are at, and thank you so much for sharing the discussions that were held. That was Professor Kedibone Phago, Director of the School of Government Studies at the Northwest University. What he's basically saying, he said, we are sinking. Municipalities are sinking. We need laws around how our coalitions work at local government. We need urgent leadership intervention. We need to rediscover our moral compass, perhaps with the intervention of traditional leaders, people who can help people in leadership redefine what it means to be a true civil servant. Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening.